we're ever going to get back to the old America, that's got to be the Democrats' part of the bargain. Stop coming up with radically new and often terrible ideas, and then in the next breath insist there be no debate about any of it. That if you don't see it right away and go along, you're bad, stupid, and deplorable. As if you were saying, duh, 2 + 2 = 5, isn't that obvious? Yeah, it's obvious you can't add. You can't just say math is racist, queers for Palestine, looting is cool, healthy at any weight. If the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie.
You can't just say shot. Bill Maher erupted, cutting through the political noise. He unleashed a torrent of radically new and often terrible ideas, pushing the Democratic Party off a cliff. Imagine hearing someone seriously proclaim math is racist, or insist that queers for Palestine is a coherent political stance. He didn't stop there, pointing to claims like looting is cool, healthy at any weight, and the truly mind-bending assertion that if the men's football team played the women's team, it would be a tie. These weren't suggestions for debate, they were presented as undeniable truths, demanding immediate, unquestioning acceptance. Disagree, and you were instantly labeled bad, stupid, and deplorable, as if you simply couldn't comprehend that 2 + 2 = 5. This enforced conformity, Maher argues, is precisely why the party is losing.
And there's a lot of stuff like that on the left. And when conservatives see it, they say, I'm sorry, we're just not going to go along with reinventing society, often pointlessly, even if we have to cancel democracy to do it. That's what they're saying. They see gender as only a construct and sex is assigned at birth, and they say, we're not doing that. Transing kids by self-diagnosis with no age limit, no parental notification, and no acknowledgement of social contagion, not doing it. Asylum now covers any reason for anyone to come to America, not doing it.
Maher's frustration boiled over during a recent segment on Real Time, where he pulled no punches dissecting the DNC's ongoing losing streak. With the midterms in 2028 already casting a long shadow, he warned that Democrats are hurtling towards another rough chapter unless they entirely rethink their playbook. Sticking to the same messaging and strategy Maher insisted could prove politically fatal. This wasn't merely a critique, it was a desperate plea for a fundamental shift before the party's current trajectory becomes irreversible. The stakes, he made clear, couldn't be higher.
Do you know what his followers say? Yeah! Yeah! That's how we want you talking to those politicians who've been stealing our money all of these years. It's not what he says. It's how he says it. He does it with vitriol and venom to show a disrespect to politicians who the public have no respect for because they feel they've been hoodwinked by those same politicians. He's using it to separate himself from the cesspool that is Capitol Hill. And how does Capitol Hill respond? By showing them they're still Capitol Hill.
The core issue, according to Maher, isn't that most liberals are insane, but rather their stunning cowardice in failing to marginalize their own extreme elements. This inaction, he argues, has been the party's ultimate downfall. By not clearly disapproving of the crazies within their ranks, liberals inadvertently lend credibility to radical positions, alienating the very mainstream voters they need to win. It's a silence that speaks volumes, creating an impression of ideological uniformity where none truly exists, defining the party's public image. A stunning example of this disconnect emerged when Maher couldn't even get Neil deGrasse Tyson, a celebrated scientific genius, to agree on basic common sense. Tyson, a preeminent voice for science, reportedly struggled to acknowledge the obvious absurdity of Scientific American and The Atlantic, claiming that separating sports by sex doesn't make sense. Maher found this baffling, emphasizing that yes, it does actually, it makes perfect sense, and it's obvious. This isn't about politics, Maher implies, it's a foundational inability to agree on empirical reality. Bill Maher wastes no time exposing what he believes is the Democrats' failing strategy, asserting the problem extends far beyond mere messaging. In his view, it's the aggressive promotion of ideas he considers fundamentally detached from basic science and common sense itself. When political leaders champion philosophies many voters intuitively see as unscientific or purely ideologically driven, they risk alienating the crucial middle ground, the very voters essential for winning elections. It's a self-inflicted wound, pushing potential allies away with extreme propositions. What makes this situation even more surprising, Maher notes, is when respected public intellectuals appear to lend credibility to these contentious conversations. Figures like Neil deGrasse Tyson, celebrated for scientific literacy, sometimes find themselves seemingly pulled into debates critics argue blur the crucial line between empirical science and political ideology. For Maher, this creates deep confusion among voters who rightly expect clarity and unwavering consistency from their scientific experts and thought leaders. Maher's broader point is remarkably simple yet profound. When a political party consistently appears to prioritize niche cultural battles over the kitchen table concerns that impact everyday Americans, it should not express shock when its polling numbers begin to stall and its electoral momentum tragically fades. This tactical misstep, focusing on divisive, often abstract issues instead of tangible improvements, is a recipe for political stagnation and widespread voter disillusionment. The consequences of this progressive overreach are stark, as Maher highlights how conservatives perceive these developments. They look at the left's current trajectory and declare, "I'm sorry, we're just not going to go along with reinventing society, often pointlessly, even if we have to cancel democracy to do it." This isn't hyperbole, it's a profound cultural chasm. For many, the left's radical proposals are seen as an existential threat, prompting a defiant refusal to concede, even at extraordinary political cost. Maher further dissects specific ideals he sees undermining the DNC's broader appeal, arguing many voters are deeply uneasy with positions they perceive as attempts to reinterpret long-standing scientific and historical understandings. He points to the insistence that gender is only a construct and sex is assigned at birth, rejecting these as confusing and unhelpful. For him, political messaging that centers on redefining complex topics like gender or social identity in unfamiliar ways only creates confusion, not consensus. The comedian highlights other incredibly controversial flashpoints, specifically the debates surrounding youth gender issues. He critiques positions advocating for transing kids by self-diagnosis with no age limit, no parental notification, and no acknowledgement of social contagion. These are not fringe discussions, they've moved into the political mainstream, deeply shaping public perception of the party. For Maher, these positions risk alienating moderate voters who might otherwise align with Democrats on economic priorities, weakening their electoral momentum. Maher continues to list positions he believes are driving away mainstream voters. Asylum now covers any reason for anyone to come to America, the notion that natural immunity doesn't count anymore, and the deeply divisive assertion that whiteness is toxic. These are not minor points, they are foundational challenges to deeply held beliefs and existing societal norms, presenting a radical departure from traditional Democratic planks and sparking widespread anxiety among diverse voter blocs. The list of contentious issues further extends to penises in women's prisons and welcoming the Intifada. Maher emphasizes that voters are simply not doing it. These extreme positions are not just isolated incidents, they've become emblematic of a party perceived as out of touch and ideologically rigid. For Maher, these are not topics that can simply be ignored or brushed aside. They are central to why the Democratic Party is struggling to connect with everyday Americans. Ultimately, Maher issues a powerful call to action for Democrats. Rethink their entire approach. He urges them to step away from rigid ideological framing and critically reopen the door to genuine debate. Maher firmly believes that political strength doesn't come from enforcing agreement through dismissal and labeling. It comes from allowing ideas to be challenged, tested, and vigorously defended in the open. It's a plea for intellectual honesty and a return to robust democratic discourse. In Maher's scathing assessment, many voters feel the Democratic Party has grown increasingly resistant to dissent, creating a chilling impression that only certain viewpoints are welcome, while others are swiftly dismissed or harshly labeled. This, he warns, creates a suffocating echo chamber, one that might energize the base but simultaneously pushes away independent and undecided voters who value open discussion, intellectual curiosity, and a diversity of thought. It's a recipe for political isolation, not broad appeal. The problem, as Maher sees it, is that disagreement is now frequently treated as a moral failure rather than a valuable opportunity for productive dialogue. This troubling shift shuts down the very kind of open exchange that a healthy democracy absolutely depends on. Critics fear this creates a climate where people are terrified of being publicly shamed or ostracized merely for expressing a differing opinion, fostering conformity over critical thought. Persuasion, not coercion, is what wins lasting support, and its absence is deeply concerning. Enter Stephen A. Smith, who adds another layer to the critique, highlighting what he believes is a separate yet equally flawed Democratic strategy, the instinct to frame everything Donald Trump does in the absolute worst possible light. According to Smith, this constant predictable outrage risks losing all its intended impact, especially when voters begin to see it as a tired, repetitive tactic rather than a truly persuasive argument. It's an approach that, he argues, has become counterproductive and predictable. Smith points out a crucial, often overlooked historical lesson. Democrats leaned heavily on demonizing Trump long before he even entered the White House, yet that very approach failed to stop him from winning in the first place. What utterly baffles Smith is that, despite this clear precedent, many figures in the DNC appear to be stubbornly doubling down on the same ineffective playbook. Instead of offering a compelling alternative vision, the focus relentlessly returns to attacking Trump's every move, a strategy proven not to work. Stephen A. Smith did not hold back, criticizing what he views as a glaring hypocrisy within the top leadership of the DNC. To him, too much of their public response feels profoundly performative, carefully staged moments designed purely to generate fleeting headlines rather than deliver any meaningful or tangible change. He argues that many Americans are grappling with real everyday concerns like crushing inflation, job insecurity, and the soaring cost of living, yet the party's leadership often seems far more focused on symbolic gestures. Smith believes voters are far more perceptive than politicians often assume, possessing an innate ability to recognize when leaders are genuinely engaged versus when they are simply managing optics. This profound disconnect, he argues, fuels widespread frustration and relentlessly erodes public trust. Instead of relying on political theater and carefully crafted public performances, Smith suggests Democrats desperately need to reconnect with voters on a practical, authentic level, directly addressing their immediate concerns through action. Smith draws a stark contrast between Donald Trump's political approach and the DNC's leadership. Trump's enduring appeal, he argues, lies in his absolute directness. He identifies problems, speaks on them plainly, and promises swift action, a style that powerfully resonates with voters who value decisiveness. Whether one agrees with his policies, Smith contends that Trump projects an undeniable clarity and intent, giving supporters the impression that he means exactly what he says, without pretense or political maneuvering. Trump's controversial use of vitriol and venom, Smith explains, actually serves a strategic purpose. It demonstrates a profound disrespect for the political class, a sentiment shared by many in the public who feel hoodwinked by politicians. This approach, Smith argues, cleverly separates Trump from the cesspool that is Capitol Hill, positioning him as an outsider who speaks truth to power. It's not just what he says, but how he says it. That creates a powerful us versus them dynamic. Smith directly challenged claims of no Trump mandate, reminding critics that Trump won all the swing states. He highlighted the significant, often overlooked elevation of Trump's popularity within key demographics, the Black community, the Hispanic community, and among young voters, despite conventional media narratives about his approval ratings. This underscores a crucial point. Raw popularity numbers don't always capture the complex dynamics of electoral success, especially with shifts within diverse voter blocs. Taken together, the stark warnings from Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith paint a troubling, urgent picture for the Democratic National Committee. Both voices, from vastly different backgrounds, pinpoint the same core issue, a profound disconnect. Voters, they argue, desperately want honesty, clarity, and tangible solutions, not rigid ideological adherence, performative political theater, or constant predictable outrage. If Democrats continue ignoring dissent, avoiding genuine debate, and relying on optics, they risk losing even more ground, turning frustration into long-term political rejection at the ballot box.